Hello everybody, today we'll be talking about how I pair readers with text inside of my classroom. First, I would like to go over the content area of text that I used inside the classroom. The text that was used is Night by Eli Weil. And according to the Lexile Analyzer, this text is based on a 10th grade reading level and is nonfiction. The content area that we will be using this is social studies. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about the assessment that I decided to use inside the classroom. The assessment that I decided to use inside the classroom is closed passages. Okay, so before I begin going over the lesson that I actually taught my students, the whole thing, giving them the passage and all that, I want to tell you a little bit about the strategy. Closed passage is meant to be used before reading, and technically during reading because they start to read whenever they're filling it out. So it's before, during, and after that you're going to use it, because you're going to look at the text, you're going to read, and then you're going to do it afterward you read. But while you're reading, you're going to think about the words. So, when creating the assessment, you leave the first sentence intact and omit every nth word. Now, when I say nth word, that means like you could decide, normally it's about the 6th word. So I decided to do the 6th word. So a closed passage consists of about 275 to 300 word passage found throughout a text. Now, whenever you start to omit the words, the first sentence you're going to stay intact. You're not going to touch the first sentence. You're going to start after the first sentence to omit words. This strategy is not used for comprehension, but rather just to pair readers with the text. One main thing that you have to remember when giving your students this assessment is to make sure that you let them know that it is not for a grade. You are just trying to match them with the text that their readability level. Okay. So, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate the closed passages that I used for my students, and then I'm going to go over how we scored them and how their test results and everything went after that, okay? So, this right here is a copy of the passage that I did. So, I'm going to read it to y'all. It says, some 2 weeks before Shavat, a sunny spring day, people blank, seemingly carefree through the crowded blank. They exchanged cheerful greetings, children blank, games, rolling hazelnuts on the blank. Some schoolmates and I were blank, Ezra Malik's garden studying a blank treatise. Night fell, some 20 blank had gathered in our courtyard blank. Father was sharing some anecdotes blank, holding forth on his opinion blank, the situation. He was a blank storyteller. Suddenly the gate opened, blank. Stern, a former shopkeeper who blank was a policeman, entered and blank my father aside. Despite the blank darkness, I could see my blank turn pale. What's wrong? We blank. I don't know. I have blank summoned to a special meeting blank. The council. Something must have blank. The story he had interpreted blank remained unfinished. I'm going right blank, he said. I'll return as blank as possible. I'll tell you blank, wait for me. We were blank to wait as long as blank. The courtyard turned into something blank, an antechamber to an operating blank. We stood waiting for the blank to open. Neighbors hearing the blank had joined us. We stared blank. Our watches' time had slowed blank. What was the meaning of blank, a long session? I have blank bad feeling, said my mother. Blank afternoon I saw new faces. The ghetto to German officers, blank, before they were Gestapo, since blank, been here we have not blank a single officer. It was blank to midnight, nobody felt like blank to sleep, though some people blank went to check on their blank, others left but asked to blank, called us as soon as my blank returned. At last the door blanked, and he appeared, his face blank, drained of color, he was blank surrounded. So, after I give out the passage and everything, I had my students read that passage out of the book. So now I'm going to read the passage without the blanks for you, and then I'm going to start filling out blanks whenever we're done reading. So, some 2 weeks before Shavuot, a sunny spring day, people strolled seemingly carefree through the crowded streets. They exchanged cheerful greetings. Children played games, rolling hazelnuts on the sidewalk. Some schoolmates and I were in Ezra Malik's garden studying a Talmudic treatise. Night fell. Some 20 people had gathered in our courtyard. My father was sharing some anecdotes and holding forth on his opinion of the situation. He was a good storyteller. Suddenly the gate opened. A former shopkeeper who now was a policeman, entered and took my father aside. Despite the growing darkness, I could see my father turn pale. What's wrong? We asked. I don't know. I have been summoned to a special meeting of the council. Something must have happened. The story he had interpreted would remain unfinished. I'm going right now, he said. I'll return as soon as possible. I'll tell you everything. Wait for me. We were ready to wait as long as necessary, the courtyard turning into something like an antechamber to an operating room. We stood, waiting for the door to open. Neighbors, hearing the rumors, had joined us. We stared at our watches. Time had slowed down. What was the meaning of such a long session? I have a bad feeling, said my mother. This afternoon I saw new faces in the ghetto. 2 German officers. I believe they were Gestapo. Since we've been here, we have not seen a single officer. It was close to midnight. Nobody felt like going to sleep, though some people briefly went to check on their homes. Others left but asked to be called as soon as my father returned. At last, the door opened and he appeared. His face was drained of color. He was quickly surrounded. Okay, so since we've read it, we can now look over our closed passage and start filling in the blanks. So, as I read it earlier, it said, some 2 weeks before Shavuot, a sunny spring day, people blank, seemingly carefree through the crowded blank. So, if I reread my passage, or they don't have to reread the passage. They actually shouldn't reread the passage. They should just go ahead and do it. But we're going to go through the passage as we do it, just because this is just a demonstration. So, a sunny spring day, people, it was strolled, seemingly carefree through the crowded streets. So you get the hint. They're just going to go through and they're going to fill out the blanks. And then when they're done, I'm going to take it and I'm going to score it. So, whenever I scored my students' thing, the first thing I did was take all the words. Basically, I went through each one and say, instead of strolled, they put walked. That means they would have gotten that one wrong. So I went through and I counted each one that was wrong and each one that's right. Then I took the number that was right and multiplied it by 2, which would determine the percentage of their readability. So, when you're interpreting the results, if they got a 60% or higher, it indicates that their readability level is an independent level. If they have a 40 to 60%, it indicates instructional level. Now, if they fall below the 40%, it means it's too hard for them and they're at the frustration level. Personally, whenever I graded my students and went through the scores, they all were above the 60%. Therefore, this text would be considered at an independent level and be used inside of my classroom. So, basically, in my opinion, this assessment is a good assessment to use inside a classroom, and it actually gives you the readability level really well. So, good luck in your class.